But maybe what makes us a little different as Democrats is we try to base our analysis on facts. So we don't look at the evidence and see that every time a Democratic president's been in office, the economy seems to be doing a little better than when the Republicans in office, and we don't automatically say, well, you just have to vote for a Democrat every time. On the other hand, we also don't say that if you cut taxes for the very top 1% and the economy doesn't do well, that doing more of that will grow the economy by 4 or 5 or 8%. We don't do that either because that's factually seems to be incorrect. They want to repeal the Affordable Care Act. I know that's shocking and kick millions of people off their health insurance. But when you ask them, well, what is it that is so bothering you about people having health insurance? They can't tell you. Because originally it was, well, it's never going to work. All right, so then it started working. And they say, well, it's going to blow up the deficit. And it's not blowing up the deficit. And then they said, well, you know, it's going to drive everybody else's premiums up, but that hasn't happened. So at some point you'd think they'd say, well, maybe we should just try to work to make health insurance even better, right? Right? Right. On climate change. Now, if you went to a doctor, no, let's change that. You go to 100 doctors, and 99 of them tell you, you've got diabetes. You've got to stop eating bacon and donuts every day. And we have to monitor your health, and we gotta fix this. You wouldn't say, oh, they're just, that's a conspiracy. They're making that up. All 99 of those doctors got together with Obama and having bacon and donuts. You wouldn't do that. That's not what you do. There's not a single person who would do that. I mean, it'd be funny, but except this is about climate change. This was an analogy. And the planet's warming. 99% of scientists have said it's warming, and we've got the Republican chairman of the Senate Energy and Environment Committee carrying a snowball into the Senate chambers to show that there's still snow and that climate change isn't happening. I am not making that up. That's what happened. That's what happened. That's crazy. I'm going to quote Kanye, but I can't because it's a family audience. But it's Frank. And by the way, the same thing is true on foreign policy. I don't want to keep on going, but have you noticed that every one of these candidates say, Obama's weak. He's Putin's kicking sand in his face. When I talk to Putin, he's going to straighten out. Just looking at him, And then it turns out they can't handle a bunch of CNBC moderators. rival those guys? Then I don't think the Chinese and the Russians are going to be too worried about it. Anyway. Here's the bottom line. Politics in this country have always been based on warring impulses between hope and fear. And fear is a powerful thing. And you can have a politics that's based on looking backwards and worrying about them versus us, and sometimes that can win an election or two. But that's not what's best in us. What's best in us is not fear. What's best in us is hope. What's best in us is the Statue of Liberty and welcoming in immigrants from around the world to seek a better life. What's best in us is when we're fighting to make sure that everybody in this country who's working hard gets paid a living wage. What's best in us is saying that women should get paid the same for doing the same work that men do. What's best in us is when we say that employers shouldn't discriminate because of what you look like. It shouldn't discriminate because of who you love. It should simply base their judgments on the job you do and the character that you display. America's at its best when we care for the most vulnerable in our society. America's at its best when we say that the economy works when everybody's got a shot. That's not just good for workers, that's also good for businesses, because then they can buy the car that you manufacture, and because they've got decent wages, they can afford to buy the new appliance or buy a house or buy tickets to Hamilton. That's a good thing for all of us. When everybody from the bottom up has a chance at life. That's when America's at its best. And I know in this political season that politics sometimes doesn't seem like it reflects the common sense and the decency and the goodness that is out there. And people get discouraged. It gets frustrated. And we have a system and we've got a media that so often rewards controversy and anger and how loud and confrontational you are. But that's not America. That's a sliver of America. One of the great privileges of being president of the United States is you get to travel all around this country and you see people from every walk of life. You talk to business leaders who have created incredible companies and changed our lives for the better, and you talk to ex-offenders who somehow found it within themselves to turn their lives around and gotten a job and are now raising families. You talk to farmers out in little rural corners of the country who understand that they've got an obligation to do something about climate change because they're close to the earth and they see how it affects them. You talk to hunters who are appalled by children being gunned down in their own schools and say that my interpretation of the Second Amendment is compatible with common sense gun safety rules. We've gone through difficult times, and people are scared sometimes. And the ground seems uncertain beneath our feet. And during those times, politics of fear can get traction. Unless those of us who are hopeful, unless those of us who are reminded of the essential energy and passion of our founders, unless we get involved. So my primary message tonight, and this performance undoubtedly described it better than I ever could, is that we can't afford cynicism, and we can't afford to withdraw. We've got too much work to do for that. Our system only works when we recognize that the government is not something separate, it's us. It's not some foreign entity. It is an expression of our values collectively and who we are and what we believe and what we care about. Justice Brandeis once said, the most important office in a democracy is the office of citizen. The office of citizen. And that's how change comes about. And that's always been my message. You know, as I enter into my last year in office, some supporters start getting nostalgic, and so we'll take pictures and they'll say, oh, Barack, I wish you could run another term. And I explain, first of all, not everybody says that. but I explained, it's unconstitutional. George Washington set a good example. B, Michelle would not permit it. And C, this has never been about me. When I ran in 2007, 2008, and a lot of you were on board, I did not say, yes, I can. I said, yes, we can. Yes, we can. And so our unfinished business doesn't depend on me, or Congress, or even the next Democratic president. It will depend on us. It will depend on each and every one of you going back from this performance and being inspired and asking, how am I going to make a difference? What am I going to do? What am I going to stir up? What am I going to be passionate about? What am I going to feel a sense of urgency towards? How am I going to work to make sure that everybody's got a living wage? How am I going to make sure that we are passing on a planet that is livable to the next generation? How am I going to make sure that everybody in this country gets treated equally by the criminal justice system? How am I going to make sure that we live up to our most precious ideas? We hold these truths to be self-evident. That all men are created equal. Endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. That's your job. That's what this election will be about. Not me, but you. What an incredible opportunity that is. What an incredible gift that our founders gave us. Let's go change this country. Let's go change the world. Thank you.